Today's story is about strange sightings of a mysterious dog-headed, human-type creature that lurks in the woods throughout Michigan and has been reported for over 100 years that Michiganders call the Dogman. It is believed that the Dogman appears every 10 years, specifically the years ending in the number 7. So do you think the Dogman's gonna appear in 2027? Ghost stories, urban legends, and mysteries. Things that have captured people's attention for thousands of years. From the first known cave paintings where they depicted large humanoid people with animal heads, all the way to today with sightings of Bigfoot, paranormal activity, and unidentified flying objects. And on this channel, we take a look at the unknown. If you enjoy mysteries, like and subscribe to catch all the future videos. The legend is said to have begun back in the year 1887 in Wexford County, which is located about 30 miles south of Traverse City, where two lumberjacks were working their way through the heavily wooded area when in the distance they noticed a strange creature, which at first glance they thought was a large man or a bear because it was tall and it was standing on its hind legs. They cautiously proceeded through the thickets. When they got closer, they realized it was no man or a bear because its head was in the shape of a dog. It had a long, slender body that the men were terrified, and the only weapons that they even had available were two axes that they had brought in to chop the trees. So, knowing they were outmatched, especially if there was a pack of these dogs, so they turned around and they fled the same way they came in. On the way out, they proceeded to look over their shoulders to make sure that this creature was not following them. When they returned to the town of Cadillac, they told the locals, which most of the locals thought these men were drunk or maybe had gone crazy. A few of the locals actually decided to investigate the area, where they reported seeing no beasts, but they did find hundreds and hundreds of tracks of wolves, which wolves were pretty prominent in the area at that time. So throughout the next 50 years, as the area started to become more and more populated, there was few to no reported sightings of this beast, except in 1917, when some teenagers who had been stashed in the woods throwing a little party say they witnessed this large beast just outside their party spot. They didn't quite speak a word of it because they thought they were going to get in trouble. Well, then came the year 1921 when they decided to finally speak about the experience. But most of the locals didn't take them serious. They chalked it up as silly kids. Then came a man named Robert Fortney, who resided in Paris, Michigan, where in 1937 he was out fishing on the Manistee River. As he calmly fished, he had heard large cracks of tree branches approaching from behind him. Well, where he was, this specific fishing hole, there's not many people that came back because it was almost 2 miles back in the deep woods off the normal path. So when he heard this noise, he figured it must be an animal instead of a person, so he sat down his fishing pole and he picked up his shotgun that he always carried with him. As he was watching, waiting for this thing to exit the thick trees, he noticed it was a pack of 5 wild dogs that must have smelled the fish that he had on shore about 10 feet away from where he was fishing. One of these dogs was huge compared to the other 4. It seemed to have less fear than the rest of the 5 dogs. Barreling out towards the fish, he thought, that big one must be the pack leader. Then, in a sudden, they pounced on the fish, wiping out a large chunk in just seconds. Robert was stunned at how aggressive they were, and specifically the size of that one. So he raised his shotgun and he fired 2 shots. Bang, bang. 4 of the dogs took off back into the woods, but one dog stayed. It was the big one, showing no fear as this dog stood up on its back legs with its amber-colored eyes just glaring back at Robert for what felt like an eternity. All of a sudden, this creature, still standing on its back legs, it had to have been 7 to 8 foot tall, turned and sprinted like a human running on a track. The noises of the crackling branches continued for about 15 seconds, when he then heard this blood-curdling scream that he almost thought was a man screaming because it echoed so much through the woods and it sounded like a man. Then everything went silent. All you could hear was the water running from the stream, no birds, no frogs, know anything. Terrified, Robert loaded 2 more shots into his gun and fled, leaving his fishing pole laying right where he had set it down next to the river. He even left the pile of fish. The whole way back to the main trail, he still never heard any other animals. In this path he took, it was narrow and in a heavily wooded area, so it took a considerable amount of time for him to get back out to the main path. Well, when he returned to town, he told the sheriff, who insisted he must have encountered a pack of wild wolves, and that he probably should not return to the area for any reason. Similar reports of this creature came in 1947 in the town of Manistee, and again throughout the 50s in Allegan County. Many people agree with Linda S. Godfrey when she wrote in her book, The Beast of Bray Road, where she compares the Manistee sightings to the similar creature that's been sighted over in Wisconsin, known as the Beast of Bray Road, or as the Wisconsin werewolf. Do you think they could be the same creature? Maybe it returns to Michigan every 10 years for mating, when with the ice, the travel between the states wouldn't be terribly hard. Then came the year 1967, when a very popular sighting was reported when 4 campers were staying in a secluded campsite in Cross Village. When they noticed through the day, while they were setting up their campsite, there was an eerie silence. There was not one animal making any noise in the area, almost like they were avoiding the area, which was already strange. Well, they shrugged it off, and they continued. Later that night, though, while they were sitting around the campfire, telling stories and snacking, one guy was laying back, just watching the stars. When out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw movement just inside the tree line. Well, this campsite was deep, deep back in the woods, with no neighboring campsites around, and they thought this must be someone lost in the woods, who could hear them and was trying to find them. All 4 campers, they got up and they started trying to kind of call this thing over. As they got past the campfire, about 15 feet from the tree line, they noticed this thing was not looking for them. It was more pacing back and forth inside the tree line. Well, one of them hollered, "Do you need help?" This creature stopped, dead in its track. Well, so did the campers. Peculiarly, one of the campers again hollered, "Hello?" This creature turned its head to look at them. With the light from the campfire, they could see this thing was huge. And he had a head like a wolf, with its long, sharp teeth out, like it was ready to attack the campers. They turned and ran back to the tents. Well, they all ended up piling into one tent, and they tried to remain as quiet as possible, even though their curiosity had them wondering. What you could hear was this thing getting closer and closer to their campsite, and with a loud bang, they knew it was close. It must be messing with their food, their supplies. But no one could bear looking out to see what this thing was. Well, what felt like forever, the noises eventually stopped, and the silence was back again. But it was too dark now to go investigate. The fire had to have been out, so they had no light out in the middle of the woods. Well, after being cooped up all night, the next morning came. As the sun finally came up, they exited the tent to discover that this thing destroyed the campsite. Everything in the campsite. Everything except for the one tent that they were all cooped up in. But they couldn't find any hair or any bite marks or anything, meaning it just ransacked the place, but it didn't eat any of the food or anything. All there was these giant dog prints around the site. Being too large to be a normal wolf or a wild dog, they quickly packed up some of their stuff and they fled, planning to never return to the area again. Well, on their way out, they noticed the animals were back. They could hear the birds chirping, the squirrels wrestling around in the foliage again. Well, that's when they realized all the animals must have feared and fled the area because of whatever that creature was. Whether the creature is real or just misidentified animals is still up to debate to this day. The legend really exploded after a 1987 DJ named Steve Cook aired a song that he created, The Legend. The song was just an April Fool's joke, but Steve claims that he made up all the stories in the song. But after the song was released, reports flooded in of people that say they encountered the Dogman. After many years past a more modern experience, it is said that in 2017, a truck driver named Joe Berger, who was a 6-year Army veteran, and he was transporting for 43,000 pounds of paper from a northern Michigan mill while he was driving through a heavily wooded area in the Manistee National Forest when he encountered the beast that he described as the Dogman. He says it must have been 10 foot tall, a werewolf type creature that ran beside his truck. He said this creature had all black fur, tall pointed ears, and scary yellow eyes. The beast had at least 3-inch long fangs on the top and the bottom of its mouth, which were super bright as contrasted with the black fur. Joe reported that the beast actually jumped onto the side rail of the driver's side of the truck while he was driving. Stunned by this thing, he remembered he had a pistol in the seat right next to him. So he pulled up the weapon and he fired one shot, apparently right through its eye socket. The animal fell from the truck and it rolled into a small ditch. By the time he got his truck turned around and returned to the area, the thing had vanished. The next day, people went to go investigate, where they found no sighting of this creature, or any signs of blood or hair or anything. So this creature somehow either avoided the gunshot, or it was shot and somehow escaped without dropping any blood or anything. So the legend claiming that the Dogman appears every 10 years, ending with the number 7. Do you think 2027 will be the next time the Dogman will be sighted? And do you think the Dogman of Michigan is real, or just many cases of misidentified other animals? Leave your comments in the comment section below.